I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club Goes to the Olympics.
Oh my God. For
Not
what?
Literally, but figuratively. Mentally, I'm here at the Olympics. Follow me on this journey. It's Paris. You just had a baguette. You've stuffed yourself with baguettes and wine, and now you're about to watch the best athletes in the planet do their damn thing. Claire, if you were an Olympic athlete, what made-up sport would you be the gold medalist at?
I don't know. It's hard because once in high school, I don't know if you guys know this, I lost Claire Parker of the Week award to someone else. So there's not a whole lot I'm good at, nay, the best at, but to-do lists. I make to-do lists every day. I ain't never to done one of them. But I think the commitment to doing something that you've never done is kind of incredible.
Yeah, me too.
And sometimes I spend so long on my to-do list that the time code gets all messed up and I have to start over. And then I've spent hours just like redoing to-do lists so I'm all caught up with the present time.
Do you ever put right to-do list on your to-do list?
Of course. I just said I won gold medal. I just said I'm the gold medalist at writing a to-do list.
Just checking.
A, B, C. I do little things. Sometimes I even do grids if it's like a multi-step problem. Listen, the amount of things that I've written down, if I could have done even half of them, I'd be president of the United States.
Oh God, I can only wish. I can only hope.
Do you think out of all the options right now, I'd be the best president?
Yes.
Thank you. I would absolutely call you up for advice.
Thank you.
You'd be my first lady.
I want to be your first phone call, like in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Could you imagine? I'm like there at NATO and they're like, America, what do you think? And I'm like, can I phone a friend? When I was like, can I poll the audience? And they're like, we have polled the audience. This was a vote. Can I have 50-50? There's only two answers.
Yes, nuke or don't nuke.
Okay, I'm going to have to call Ashley again then. Ashley.
Yeah?
This question you've sprung on me that you've had ample time to think about. If you were the gold medalist at something, what would the sport be?
Oh, Claire. It's very, very odd that we've known each other this long and you think that when I say things, it's because I've thought about it for ample amounts of time. That being said, I do think I would win gold medal at smooching my dog on the noggin.
That's not even true.
You think someone smooches my dog on the noggin more than me?
Not more, but better.
It's a numbers game.
Listen, there's number and then there's execution.
Who do you think smooches her better than me?
I'm just saying we haven't really run the tests.
Well, I guess next up on your to-do list, it's who the fuck knows my dog?
JK, you probably do smoocher good.
Thank you. Should we see how high we can soar this week and whether or not we even have the courage to do it?
Let's ask Olympic gold medalist Simone Biles.
With a foreword by Mary Lou Retton in, frankly, one of the most passive-aggressive passages I've ever read.
Hit me with why, because I skipped this part because I said if it's not even by Simone, then I do not have to read it.
I don't know if I was just being petty, but it felt very focused on being like, oh yeah, I'll write the foreword for what you're calling a great Olympian's memoir. But who was a great Olympian before that? Me. And it's important that we don't forget that. The whole thing is like, once I laid the groundwork, people like Simone could really soar. And she probably did lay the ground. Like, I don't know enough about gymnastics history, but this isn't her damn memoir. First of all, she talks about meeting Simone Biles and really clocking that she was going to be something special.
Something crazy about gymnastics is, and it's hit me just reading this sentence, she was an outrageously talented 12-year-old dynamo. The idea that like adults would get around and look at a bunch of 12-year-old girls and be like, who of these is going to take us to the next level? 12 is so young to be good at anything.
That's what I was thinking throughout this entire book, is how crazy it is that with gymnastics, the most elite athletes in the world are babies.
When she's like, there I was, not sure if I'd make nationals or if I'd have to wait a whole nother year. Plus, sixth grade was starting soon. I'm like, what are you talking about? It is preposterous that we're even letting these people run around.
Like, it shouldn't even be a choice.
You should start gymnastics at 18, take a tumble class when you're stiff as a board. That is an interesting competition.
Totally. You shouldn't even be allowed to try. I may have been the first American gymnast to earn all-around Olympic gold, and I'm proud of that, but I'm even more proud that I'm now part of a special sorority that includes Carly Patterson in 2004, Nastia Liukin in 2008, Gabby Douglas in 2012, and in 2016, Simone Biles.
Do you remember when Nastia Liukin upset Shawn Johnson? That was crazy.
That was crazy.
I was realizing I have not watched the Olympics in a really long time and I couldn't figure out why. I think it's just because I haven't had a TV with TV on it.
Yeah.
I kept being like, why don't I remember any of these Olympics when I know that I love the Olympics and I watch them a lot? And I realized it's just because I don't have like TV.
Yeah, I haven't had a TV with TV on it in so long that in order to watch the Olympics, I have to like make a concerted effort to like figure out how. And I'm not
doing that.
Do it. But you have TV now.
I have TV now, and I can't wait for you and me to watch the Olympics and give live updates on the Patreon. We'll give all of our thoughts on all the hottest ones, like synchronized diving and what else are they doing out there? Basketball.
Oh my God, skateboarding is in the Olympics now.
Paragliding.
Is it?
I don't know, but they're always adding new stuff.
Okay. Should I sleep over at your house so that we can watch the Olympics for 2 whole weeks nonstop?
Yes.
Should I move it?
Bring food.
Should we not leave the entire time? I'll bring beans and canned tuna.
Yeah, should we sleep in tents as if there's not even beds available? Should we pretend like we're camping?
Yeah.
Should we do a French-themed camp?
Yes.
And only eat sausage and baguette?
Yes. Pâté, perhaps.
Ah, delish. Fromage.
Oh, I love fromage.
So I'm just going to let you guys know up top, in case you're holding your breath, this book made me cry 100 times. Is it that deep? No. Is it that great? No. It is a perfect book. She's a perfect person. I was on the subway in tears.
Can I say, she is perfect. She's so sweet and earnest.
She's just trying so hard. And there was a couple times I wanted to get in there and grab her by the shoulders and say, stop being so hard on yourself, Simone. You're better than all of us. You're better than literally anybody who's ever been born. And if I could step into traffic to help you, I would. I would do anything for you in a way that I won't even do anything for myself.
I agree with that.
That being said, I will start by teasing this book a wee bit. On the back, the little blurb about it is, you might think that going from a girl in foster care to being an Olympic gold medalist in Rio de Janeiro is the most amazing part of my journey. It isn't. It's how I got there. Okay, that's like what
that's just not a sentence. So you might think this is the most amazing part of my journey, but that's actually the whole journey. The pieces in between are also important.
Actually, the thing that happened to me between the age of 2 and the age of 20 is not the incredible thing. It's how the things that happened to me in between. Like, what are you talking about?
It is incredible, though.
It is incredible, and she is so incredible.
That sentence is incredible.
She makes me proud to be an American.
Yeah, she's the only one who's ever done it.
That's not true. Every gymnast of all time and every Olympics ice skater.
Oh, yeah.
And the soldiers.
No. No offense, though. No offense to the troops, but Michelle Kwan got you got.
So she starts, as all great books start, in the middle of an important moment. The good thing about this book is that I don't understand anything about gymnastics except for I understand the words nationals, I understand the word worlds, and then I understand Olympics. Everything else is gobbledygook.
Yeah.
So she's like at USAG, the USAG qualifiers in St. Paul, Minnesota, the Visa National Championships. And guess what? She doesn't make the team. Okay, so this book is very clearly written for like young gymnasts.
Yeah.
Which, as it should be. I have no business reading it. If anything, I wish we weren't reading this book and Simone Biles was putting out a new book soon and we could read that book instead. Because I'm actually quite interested in what happened to her post-Olympics, because per Gracie Gold, last Olympian we read, we know that that's like the most interesting thing that happens.
There's quite a crash after you've stood atop the world stage with an award.
At the only thing you've been working on your whole life.
Yeah.
To like work towards number one your whole life and then be number one. There's nothing really for you on the other side. And people have nervous breakdowns.
Especially because one thing that's really interesting about, like we said, these sports where the elite champions are babies, most of their lives, they've kind of been just grinding towards this place where you only have so much time in order to achieve what you could ever possibly achieve. So your life starts afterwards. It's very explicitly said in this book, after the Olympics is when her life would begin. And we know that she's, days away from her second Olympics since that Olympics. That was going to be the beginning of the end of the beginning, whatever. It's bad for your brain, I think. What's happening here?
Yeah, it's tough. Anyway, my bigger point was I don't really understand what's going on. I think she's like competing for the juniors or she's competing for the artistic junior team. I don't really understand what a junior team and a senior team even mean.
Okay, can I try to explain it, what I think is happening? So this is something else we learned from Gracie Gold's book, which is actually very interesting to me, is that for the most part, choosing a national team is not just points. There's like a head of USAG, a head of like US figure skating, who are selecting based on like bankability of these stars kind of. So I think the juniors is people that they want to groom as like the USA elites, and the seniors are the people who compete on behalf of the US at international tournaments.
Okay.
So that's what it felt like to me. And so here she was at age 14 competing at nationals
to try to make it onto the juniors team.
Yeah. So I think that everyone at any gym can do enough competitions to make it to US nationals. And from there, the USA Gymnastics like organization selects who are its juniors and who are its seniors. So here at this competition, at the end of it, there is a ranking of all of the gymnasts who competed based on like points of their performance. There's points for difficulty of your routines. There's points for execution of those moves. And then I think there's like vibes points, because the ranking is made by USAG, which is led by Martha Caroli.
And I think it used to be her and her husband.
Yeah. So after all of her work, she's really in her head because there was one move that she should have tried, but she was too scared to try it and she didn't do it. And then at the rankings, she comes in 14th, and the top 13 are the people who make juniors, which feels like a huge number because later there's only 6 people who make juniors.
Yeah. They just like choose it year by year. I also think it has to do with the Olympics teams. Like she later says, like at Worlds, the year after the Olympics, there isn't a team competition because so many people retire after the Olympics that a lot of countries have to scramble to rebuild their team. So I actually do think the whole system kind of works on a 4-year Olympics-based situation. So maybe this was one of those rebuilding years. I do think a lot of this is based on building towards the Olympics. And so maybe they needed like a bigger crop to try to like work towards the next.
It's also so fascinating that there are these like elite gymnasts, but based on just when you're born and if the Olympics hit when you're at your peak or not,
yeah,
whether or not you become like a household name. These people that she's saying who are famous within gymnastics because they're constantly winning gold medals at Worlds are names I had never fucking heard of in my life until all of a sudden she starts naming like the years surrounding the Olympics where she's with like Ali Reisman and Michaela Maroney and people like that.
Yeah, Lori Hernandez.
Yeah. So she's talking about being in the same room as these girls that she's been reading about in Sports Illustrated and like the gymnastics magazine for ages. And she missed making the team by 1 spot. It was devastating. She was heartbroken. I thought my failure at the 2011 Nationals was an ending, but it was really a beginning, a turning point on a journey I still can't believe I'm taking. And so now we go back to her birth.
So she was born in Ohio to a woman
named Shannon.
Shannon struggled with addiction. She had 2 older children, and then 2 years after Simone was born, on March 14th, 1997, her little sister Adria was born. So there was 4 kids: Tevin, Ashley, Simone, and Adria. Unfortunately, they were often left unsupervised. Their mother was not able to care for them. So when she was 3 years old and her baby sister was like 6 months old, they got put in foster care.
Yeah, one of the neighbors called Child Protective Services and was like, I'm seeing these kids alone way too often. Simone says they often went without food. And she was like jealous of cats because they would feed the cats and not the kids.
So she goes to foster care and she says it was like a nice time. You know, she was there with all 3 of her siblings. She was happy just to be fed. And it seems like she was young enough. She was just kind of like going with it. But after about 6 months, I guess her grandfather, her mother's father, had heard that they were in foster care and was like, no, I have to go get those children. Like, those children cannot just be with a stranger. Her biological mother, Shannon, and her adoptive father were not that close because he had had her, it seems like, as a teen, and she had grown up with her mom in Ohio. And he now lived with his new wife and their 2 teenage children in Springs, Texas, right outside of Houston. But he talked to his wife and he's like, I have to go get those kids. And she said, God told her, you don't turn your back on family. They went and got all 4 children, and they went and they had like a really great year living with their grandparents.
Then Shannon was working on getting clean. She was in a rehab program. And then finally she came back to get the kids. It was kind of a tough situation where they didn't know if the kids should just stay with the grandparents or go back to Ohio with Shannon.
And there was a real divide where the 2 older children who had built a stronger bond with their biological mother wanted to be with their biological mother, but the younger children wanted to stay with the grandparents. The grandparents wanted to keep them. Ultimately, they went back to the first foster home where a reunification was being overseen by government specialists, and Shannon had to pass a couple of drug tests in order to get clean and was unable to do so.
They spent like a couple months back with this foster family waiting for Shannon to pass these drug tests. She didn't. And so then they called the grandparents back up and said, okay, you can come get them. So then I guess this was maybe another year after that. And then they were back with the grandparents permanently. But the older siblings, Ashley and Tevin, ended up going to a different family member in Ohio so that they could stay closer to Shannon because they just didn't want to be in Texas. But Simone and Adria loved it there. Separating the 4 kids ended up being what all of them eventually thrived with.
Well, we don't know how the older siblings did, to be honest.
That's true. But Simone, we're reading her book, so.
Simone and Adria ended up very happy with their grandparents. So they ended up living in Spring, Texas, right outside of Houston, as I said. Their mom now, their adoptive mother, who's their step-grandmother, actually is from Belize. She had met their grandfather right out of college. She had moved up there to get her nursing degree. He was stationed from the Air Force in, what is it, like Fort Worth or Dallas or something? I don't know. San Antonio, Texas. There we go. They fell in love. They had 2 boys. The rest is history.
So they also ended up becoming pretty successful owning nursing homes.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they sold the business, they owned and operated 14 nursing homes. So they led a very good, it seems, upper middle class life.
Yeah, they were very comfortable. They had all 4 kids. The older boys, Ron and Adam, were in high school when the girls first went to live with them. And so by the time they were formally adopted, which was like 2 to 3 years later, between the mom trying to get them back and the paperwork, I think the boys were mostly in college.
Mm-hmm. But they still seem like pretty close family members.
Yeah, I think they went to local college. So actually, the very first time Simone ever went to gymnastics, because she was a super hyper little girl, even from the time she was like 2 years old, she was always doing flips and climbing up stuff and on the swings, on the trampoline. Her older brothers would play this game where they would just like bounce her as high as she could when she was 3, 4 years old and see how many flips she could do. She said they would just stand still and she would crawl up to their shoulders as like a little girl. So she was always like incredibly athletic, incredibly hyperactive.
She said she would constantly get in trouble at various, like at her foster home, at her grandparents' house, just like climbing things. They would be like, how did you get to where you could reach these things? Like, this doesn't even make sense that you could do this.
So her older brother, Adam, was working at the daycare where she was working during his college years. And I guess they were supposed to go to a zoo or something for a field day. It was raining. They had to think of something indoors. And her brothers came up with the idea to go to a gymnastics tumbling gym for the day just to have fun because he specifically thought Simone's going to love this.
They went to Bannon's Gymnastics, which ended up being Simone's gym for the next like
forever.
14 years.
Yeah.
So they go to Bannon's Gymnastics for the day. He knew his sisters would enjoy it more than going to a museum where you'd have to be quiet. So in terms of indoor activities, this is as good as it gets. And as soon as they get there, Simone is like leaping off the walls, having the time of her life.
She's doing flips. I did a backflip with a little twist on the layout, and then I did it again, landing upright on my feet. Right then, a lady from the gym came over to talk to us. We had seen her at the receptionist's desk earlier when we first came in. The whole time I'd been jumping and flipping and swinging from the low bar, she'd been watching me from across the room. And she basically was like, if you want to do this, give us a call. Here's a flyer. And Simone brings it to her mom, and her mom goes, yeah, they give every fucking kid a flyer, Simone. They like want your business.
They're trying to sell people gymnastics class. But then the mom realized this actually does make a lot of sense for Simone, who has like more energy than anyone on the entire planet. The mom admits years later, even though they would jump on the trampoline for hours on end, the sport just wasn't part of my experience. Growing up in Belize, we'd watch gymnastics when the Olympics came around, but that was all. Like, it just never would have occurred to her to sign Simone up for gymnastics. So she ends up doing it. And from day one, the coach who teaches the little kids went to Amy, who was the coach of like the more elite junior league or whatever.
Again, we're talking about like 6th and 7th graders.
Yeah.
She was dealing with the professionals, middle schoolers.
The elites, the people who were like going to little local competitions. So this person who was teaching the little kids was like, you have to come see this girl. And Amy, the more advanced coach, was like, yeah, I'm actually so busy. And finally, one day, Amy happens to be walking by when Simone is doing some stuff. And she's like, who the hell is that? And Ronnie was like, I told you. And so she goes to talk to the parents and is like, this is kind of a thing.
So just a few weeks after she joined the program, she's immediately doing all of the basic skills to get into level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. She's like speeding through it. Even at 6 years old, I had such crazy upper body strength that it was always easy for me. At the end of that recital, everybody got a trophy for participating, but from then on, my training shifted into high gear. The very next week, my coaches moved me straight to level 4. Then a couple weeks later, they began training me on level 5 skills and signed me up for my first competitive season, which ran from August to November in the JO program. So in order to like move up a level, you have to be able to do certain things at competition. And she is just like speed racing through them. She's 6 years old. And she says in the gymnastics world, that's like a late start. A lot of people are already in their elite training at this level.
Yeah, the fact that she like didn't walk into a gymnastics gym until she was 6 is crazy. But then within the first year, she kind of started plowing through stuff. Another thing though that I found so interesting is that her power was a little bit of a hindrance for a moment.
Yes.
We'll get more into this later, but I feel like Simone Biles has always been talked about as someone who like walked into a gym day 1 and was like gold medal at Worlds day 2. But it actually wasn't good that she could jump so high and flip so hard because you have to be able to land smoothly.
Yeah, she needed to learn the control. Beyond just her natural power and size and joy and love of the game, she had enough raw ability, and it turned out that she was a visual learner. I could look at someone else doing a skill and quickly copy it. I also had an inborn sense of where I was as I tumbled through the air. She has incredible air balance. She can feel exactly where she is in space while flipping and twisting.
It's so crazy. I feel like I've never been more opposite of anyone in my life. I have no air balance. Sometimes when I'm like walking a little too fast and I get off the ground, I'm like, oh my God, what direction am I facing right now? I also have no muscles.
I don't think anyone listening is like, this is so weird. Ashley should be in gymnastics.
Of course not. But it's so funny to me reading like a book about a 6-year-old who just had like such inherent strength that she could just climb all the way to the top of a rope. Because when I was little, and to this day, my dad would call me a marshmallow because he said it's remarkable how little muscle you have inside of your body. It's actually so interesting that you could maybe not even hang from a rope.
When she was 7, she saw someone do a back tuck standing and just like did it. And then was like, I bet I could do it on a beam. And she went and just like did it on a beam.
And they were like, get off the beam. This is so dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
And it didn't matter. She did it anyway. Years later, Amy told me that was the day she knew I had what it took to go all the way to nationals, to worlds, and one day maybe even to the Olympics.
Maybe. So then she talks a lot about school and friendship. I think it's very important to her in this book to make sure you know her life isn't just gymnastics, but her life is kind of just gymnastics.
Yeah, it's funny. I was like, I wonder how that could be possible because she is literally in the gym from 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. every day.
It's like so important that she's like, but I still Snapchat my friends.
Yeah, she loves to let you know she has a phone. She grew up in an incredibly strict household. Her grandmother is very Catholic. I have heard of not being allowed to have sleepovers, but she also wasn't even allowed to have play dates.
Except with her cousins.
Sometimes it seems.
Yeah.
She was only allowed to play with the people who happen to live exactly next door, and that's also just in the cul-de-sac.
For her birthday, she's like allowed to ride her bike like 10 feet further.
I do think this is a cute book. There's definitely stuff that I was like, okay, I could skim this. But I didn't. I read it dutifully, but I was like, well, this was skimmable. But it's like a lot of like on the days I wasn't playing outside, I like to watch Powderpuff Girls. I like to watch I'm like, okay, I get that this is cute for like young gymnasts who are like, okay, I'm normal just like her.
Yeah.
But for me, I was like, it's actually not that interesting what TV shows you watch. She told this story that starts, Adrian and I ran down the street toward Becca's house, our flip-flops squishing the water-soaked grass of our neighbor's lawn. It was late September and Hurricane Rita had recently flooded southern Texas. And I was like, oh my God, their house is about to like be flooded. And it turns out she's like, we used the boards from the windows to make a clubhouse. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I guess the point of it is, I think, for young gymnasts to be like, you shouldn't be only thinking about gymnastics. You should also watch the Powderpuff Girls.
It's really important to her that people understand that she's a human being. And it's so interesting to read this in light of the 2020 Olympics, which did happen in 2021. But the way that she had to drop out, and I think she was like struggling, even coming off of her like gold medal accomplishment at the Olympics 2016, the way that she's like, no, you don't understand. I'm a person. And sometimes I struggle and sometimes I have hard days. And sometimes she responds to everything by crying. And I feel like a lot of this book is like, no, you don't understand. Like, I love playing. I love watching TV. I love hanging out with my friends. I love like planning my wedding.
It like really bothers her that people refer to her in the media as the robot because she's just so like on it.
She's like, I can't stop but giggle. I can't stop but cry. She's explosive, just like her back tuck front lips. What?
Maybe the Biles.
Just like her Biles moves. That's like a reference to an actual jump she invented called the Biles. She's explosive emotionally. She's just a regular girl like anyone else.
Speaking of the Biles, she talks about how it got invented and also that it makes her stressed out that there's a move named after her because she's like, if someone ever gets injured doing that move, I'll feel like it's my fault.
It's not your fault that you're so much better than other people that they like can't handle being you. She has an entire chapter about her grandma dying, which is sweet and sad for her. When she finds out that her grandma's sick and going to move in with them, she's like, to me, this seemed like a chance for us to pamper Grandma Kay as she had always pampered us. I imagine bringing her breakfast in bed, snuggling up to her on the couch in the TV room, and seeing her in the viewing area with the rest of the family. She's just so earnest and sweet and like wants to be such a cute little good person. And I love her so much. But it does kill me that I'm like, I guess it is like, well, what are 11-year-olds going through? I guess at 11, your grandparents die. And that's who this book is for.
And I feel like she's so emotional because it's not like she's never been through anything. Like up until age 5, she was ping-ponging between states.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is when you have to write a book at 20 and most of your life has been training for one thing and you have to fill it out.
Yeah.
You're like, any grandparents die? And you're like, I have a great grandma who died. And they're like, yeah, that's pretty tragic. She should be alive to this day.
So now we're back in the gym. She's training with a mission now. She's not just a girl in gymnastics class. She's being overseen by a proper coach who has never trained an elite athlete at her level before. But they kind of decide, let's all do this together. And it ends up being quite a blessing. We'll talk about it later. Because she is training at this level, she needs to do all 4, they call them apparatuses.
Well, they are. That's how like IT guys are always calling it your machine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you talking about my iPhone? They're like, is the machine on or off? And I'm like, my laptop?
Yeah.
A machine is a printing press. This is just something I throw on the ground and step on. This is just something I use to send texts when I've turned my phone off, but still want to text.
This is my dog camera. So she has to do uneven bars, which is her enemy from the beginning. She's stupid good at floor. She's really good at beam. She sometimes falls off, but it happens to the best of them. Vault, she's pretty good. Uneven bars, it's so crazy because when you think about how all of them function, you're like, well, that's just a different sport.
Yeah.
So she's trying to learn how to do this one move that is kind of her enemy forever. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It's called like a tchotchke or something.
Yeah, I think that's it exactly.
Totally. My fall that day was so bizarre that when I hit the high bar, I bounced off of it and rolled down the steel cables at the side, landing hard on the concrete.
So she freaks out and is like, I'm never doing that again. And then her coach is like, get up. She's hysterically crying. She's a big crier. And they're like, get up. And she's like, you can't make me. Nicole reached over and easily lifted my skinny 8-year-old frame, then placed my hands on the bar. At this point, I was sobbing so hard I couldn't see anything. They made her keep doing it again and again and again until she got it right. And later she's like, I'm so grateful that they made me push through my fear. Otherwise, I might have psyched myself out. And I was like, totally.
I'm so grateful.
How dare an 8-year-old be afraid of like breaking their back on concrete?
Some gymnastic skills came fairly easy to me. It was clear from the start I had to put in a lot of extra effort on bars. I didn't love that apparatus the way I loved all the others.
She says the problem is that everything else she could use her sheer power, but with bars, you really have to like work with the bars and like learn to get their bounce and their swing. And she had a hard time giving over control.
Yeah, and it's also like when you're jumping up and then catching on your way back down, if you go higher than usual, you catch at a different time than usual. Like the flow is so important. By the time I reached level 8, I was spending 3 to 4 hours a day at the gym every day after school. That is so much time.
During my level 9 competition season, I was 11 years old and a 6th grader at Strack Intermediate. She's trying her best to like live both lives. She says she's kind of a dork at school and can't wait till the day that she's popular. She has her friends and she's definitely not shy, but she feels like she doesn't have a real place she fits in.
I was starting to win medals regularly. Some of the other coaches were worried I was moving too quickly and would get burned out. But Amy was very on board with like, as long as she likes it and she isn't stressed out, she can just do whatever she wants. My mom and dad were on the same page as Amy. My family supported my gymnastics, cheering me on at meets both home and away. And now that I was winning more, they began paying closer attention.
She talks about the little things that are happening to her at school. They get a dog. She gets a boyfriend for one day. She says when she's home, she loves to make lists, like the countries she's visited, what she wants to do after 2016, cliff jumping, snowboarding, skydiving, swim with sharks, ride elephants, swim with dolphins. And that last list was a clue that I had already started to look ahead to the 2016 Olympics because I didn't plan to do anything before then that might get me injured. Then again, since I was now competing at a level 10 and had recently told Amy and my parents I definitely wanted to go elite, I needed to ramp up my weekly training schedule. So where would I find the time for cliff jumping anyway? So they're trying to figure out how she could get in the extra hours of training she needs a week. Right now she's doing like 3 a day after school, but most people at her level are already doing at least 5. So they decided that she's going to go to this private school across the street from her gym so that this would allow me to add 2 hours of training every morning from 7 to 9. And then I could just walk across the street to school. In the afternoon, I'd simply walk back to the gym for my second training session of the day. That would increase my gym time from 20 to 30 hours a week.
She hates her new school. Everyone is like weird. One kid chases her with a knife.
It turns out that it's a school for kids with like learning challenges or behavioral issues.
So it's just not that fun. And she's like, well, it's fine because I'll go to high school and I'll be back with my friends. So this is only really like a year and a half.
So she keeps training at Bannon's gym, even though she's the only person at that level and they've really never gone this high before.
And then Martha Caroli. So she's the head of USA Gymnastics. She has this training camp that she does at her private gym I guess like almost once a month. And being on Martha's radar is one of the most important things for someone with Olympic dreams. And so Amy sends a tape of Simone to Martha, and Martha was like, no.
The problem is she doesn't have bars. I can't let her come to camp. She can tumble great, but that's it. And this is when her mom is like, listen, Amy, I know you've never trained an elite gymnast. The highest you've gone at Bannon's is level 10. So I need to know now whether you can take Simone farther, or do I have to find another gym? Basically, she's like, well, let me just bring in specialists for different things, but let me be Simone's coach. And Simone wants Amy as a coach because she says she gets me emotionally. And it's so smart that her family recognized this. And I really think one of Simone's strengths beyond her obvious, like natural God-given talent and discipline and work ethic is that her family was so not gym rat family. They put so much of it on Simone's shoulders to be like, if this is what you want to do whatever you want. You get to pick the coach you want. And Simone wanted the coach who like understood her and got her. And she's like, she knows how to cool me off when I'm feeling hot-headed. She knows when to push me and when to like let me take a break. She knows how to like treat me at a meet when I'm getting my head. And it's so funny because I think there might have been an instinct to be like, oh, well, if she had gotten a better, more technical coach, she would have done things earlier. But when you look at the fact that she's going back for her third Olympics, which is kind of unheard of in the sport of gymnastics, maybe all of that goes to the fact that she has had a coach that did not push her the way like an elite Russian style gymnast coach would have pushed her.
Of course, they still had this mindset of you get one, maybe two Olympicses before you burn out. And especially because she was only a few months off from the 2012 Olympics. So she was 19 going into her first Olympics. So the idea that she's doing a third Olympics at 27 is crazy. But also, I don't know, maybe gymnasts don't have to burn out.
Yeah, maybe if they had ever just tried, maybe if they said like, it's so mental. Maybe if they're like, let's give you a little bit of maturity so that you can handle these grueling days and like get to competition and be able to study your mind. But also maybe Simone's just that much better than everybody has ever been. I guess also the Olympics have yet to come. So we'll see how she does. Maybe it was a huge mistake. What if she goes out there and she can barely move her little body because she's so old and haggard?
Yeah, last year she like won worlds again, but this year
that was when she was 26.
Old bitch.
You're so young at 26 in a way that 27 can't even fathom.
That's so true. It's all about health insurance.
So she goes to nationals again in 2011, and this time she takes first place all around. This is my debut as a junior elite gymnast, and somehow I managed to win gold right out the gate.
Somehow.
So she finally makes the 2011 women's junior team, which means she gets to go to Caroli Ranch on July 1st. She gets there and she had never trained at this level before. Again, she is like the biggest fish at her little gym, and she has never experienced the stick it style, like never smile, be serious, we will break you kind of mentality, which is what they have here.
Yeah. Martha is like very, if you're smiling, it means you're not working hard enough. If you're laughing, it means you're not working hard enough. If you're able to like maintain
friendship,
conversational cadence, you're not working hard enough.
Meanwhile, Simone thought that the camp was like literally going to be bonding and roasting marshmallows and shit.
She's like, I'm going to camp.
At the ranch, being committed meant you kept a straight face and did the conditioning drills and worked at perfecting your skills until you thought you were so tired you couldn't go on, and then you worked some more. So she was not happy about this.
The repetition was so relentless that instead of feeling sharper, I was actually starting to feel blurry and a little bored.
And again, this is where she's like, whereas Amy, if she saw that I was just having an off day, she'd have me go do conditioning and be like, I don't want you doing bad gymnastics. I'd rather have you do stairs all day than like practice a flip that you're clearly not getting.
Yeah. Up until then, gymnastics had been mostly fun and games for me. I had to start seeing it as work too. So this is kind of one of the teetering points where she has to decide if she's going to be a gymnast or if she's going to be someone who is really good at gymnastics.
However, after she leaves the camp, she goes to the American Classic and ends up getting a full point higher than she needed in order to qualify for the Visa National Championship in August. So she is in. So then she gets to go to the CoverGirl Classic. And this is like her chance to fix her routine before nationals. Then she has a whole thing, which everybody does about, turns out she has ADHD.
It's either 9/11 or ADHD. Everybody gets one.
I was cursed with both. That's why I'm doomed. But she's also like, it's so weird because when I'm doing gymnastics for 8 hours a day, I can really focus. I'm like, totally. It's almost like ADHD is just like a made up thing in our overstimulated environment.
Well, it's like the way you're laser focused on 9/11. So she is a bit of a basket case when it comes to competition. Right before she goes out on the floor, she'll like go to the bathroom and
want to puke,
weep.
So she's going to her first nationals and everything is going to be perfect, except for the only thing she can't do is her tchotchkev bars routine thing that she's been trying to do for a while. And so she's in the bathroom, she's crying about it. She doesn't know what to do.
And then this girl, Lexi, was like, stop crying. And also let go of the bar earlier than you think. That's the trick.
And sure enough, she goes out there and for the first time in her life, she nails it. And she's like, wow, thanks, Lexi.
In competition. That's so crazy to me to be like, what if I just let go of the bar differently than I've ever tried it in the middle of a competition? I mean, it worked. That's why she's different than me. That's the only reason she's different than me.
Ironically, like the rush from getting that, she like fucks everything else up. She falls off the bars twice more because the problem is in practice, she had never actually completed that trick. So she had never had the experience of like going from that trick to the next. So she like fell off the bars twice, but her coaches were like, that was incredible. You did it. And everybody's like, why are you so happy? And she's like, well, I didn't fail in the same way.
You can't go back. The best thing you can do is forgive yourself, take a deep breath, and get to work on the next challenge. But that doesn't mean you can't ball first. And let me tell you, I did. So then she gets to St. Paul, Minnesota.
Now we're back in 2011 at that fateful opening chapter
where she does not make the official juniors team.
So now it's this like really hard vault called like the Aminov or something that they want her to do.
Aminar.
And the Aminar. And it's been told by Martha Caroli, this is what she needs to do on the vault to make the team. And this one guy, Tomas, one of the coaches from band, is like, do it. And she can feel in her heart, she goes, I'm not ready. If I try to do it, I'm going to hurt myself. And she stands up to her coach and says, I'm not ready. I can't do it. And she does a less hard trick. And that is why they think she doesn't make the team, because she basically deliberately went against Martha and because she can't do whatever trick Martha thinks is required for her to get onto the next stage. And Tomas like really freaks out at her about this. But she's kind of like, I don't know, I'm really proud of myself. I knew I wasn't ready. If I had tried that and hurt myself, I would not have been able to recover the way that like the loss then propelled me to work harder in the gym. And I really agree.
No, I completely agree. I think she did an amazing job.
It ain't over until you like tear your ACL.
That's the thing is at this point, she is 14 years old. She is a few years in. She's just now competing at an elite level. Why destroy yourself here? It's just not the time.
And she's really close with her brothers. Her brother Ron calls her and he says, hey girl, I saw what happened and I know you're disappointed right now, but you're just one slot off from making the team. And that's something, because you know what, Simone, you can use this as motivation to go into the gym and train even harder. Coming in at 14 just means you're almost there. And maybe it's just not your time yet, but trust me, your day will come because you're that good. So she's like in her hotel room, like hysterically sobbing.
And this is a really good lesson, I think, for everyone. A person can only fail if they stop trying.
Meanwhile, back in Texas, nobody had ever even made it to nationals. So she was like a huge winner to them.
Yeah. And so now what's happening is she's about to go into high school and she's been so excited for this day for a year and a half. She's hated this middle school that she had to go to that was right by the gym. She was so excited to go back to normal high school with her friends and have like a classic high school experience whilst training as an elite gymnast. And then she finds out that you actually can't do that. You can't train for the Olympics or Worlds or like any major competition and be on the elite USA gymnastics team and also be in normal high school, because it's just like the time commitment. You can't have it. They were like, in the state of Texas, the number of days that you are required to attend.
I mean, I think it's every state. I don't think there's any state in America.
The number of days that she would have just definitely had to miss in order to make it to competitions.
I mean, more than that, it sounds like they have to be in the gym 8 hours a day. There's just like not enough hours in each day.
Yeah. But they said it kind of comes down to the fact that she would have been traveling a lot. And they were like, you just will fail school. Like, even if you get the assignments in, even if you study and do stuff at home and have a tutor, like they'll fail you for not showing up. And so she has to decide to scale back on gymnastics and go to high school or be homeschooled and do gymnastics. And it is like a decision that weighs on her. She can't decide. She enters what she calls bratty Simone era, where she's just upset.
It makes me so sad. She talks about bratty Simone era for like a few chapters in this book. And I'm just like, you were just a 14-year-old who was doing something incredible. And also you have hormones. You're allowed to be sad. Yeah. I don't know.
And eventually she decides that she has a gift and it would be a waste to not use it. I agree. She's the best gymnast in the world.
I also do think when you're 14, it's so hard to believe that anything on earth could be better than going to high school prom.
Yeah.
And it really is just like, at the end of the day, I think going to the Olympics is cooler than going to prom. It's so funny to think the thing she's so worried about in this book missing out on is going to homecoming and going to like pep rallies for football games. And I'm like, don't you worry about it. I think you end up marrying an NFL star. You will go to a football game. But like when you're 13, that shit is everything. And it's hard to have the perspective that like one day, actually, those little moments aren't that big of a deal.
Yeah, but it also is a thing that because she had such a grounded family and friends, I think it ended up not being that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to dismiss the amount that she felt torn between these things because I do think it could have destroyed her. Like, she could have been like completely freaky deaky.
Yeah, and I do think the fact that it was on her at all. I think the fact that it was her choice to make.
Yeah.
And that felt like a big choice at the time. But I think that that's why she's come out so sweet, because she wasn't doing it for her parents. Her parents weren't pushing her into this. They were just like allowing her to be as talented and driven as she wanted to be.
Yeah.
She even says like her dad used to come every day at the end of practice and see where they were at. But her mom chose only to go to competitions. And she said, I don't want to get involved in your gymnastics life because I think it's important to have distance. I think someone in your life has to have a little bit of perspective on like all this gymnastics stuff, as her mom would call it. And she was like, I'm not your fan, I'm your mom.
Yeah. That being said, her parents do eventually open an elite gymnastics gym.
Well, listen, they're business ladies.
Yeah.
Not the both of them, the one of them, the mom.
A business lady.
And her husband.
So now she's training for nationals again. She's been moody as hell, especially now that she's not in school anymore. And she's just a teenager. I don't know. She's always talking about how she had a bad attitude for 2 years. And it's
but
just
she'd
like,
also be like, I would never speak out to somebody. I would never be rude out loud. I would just sometimes like roll my eyes or like huff. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. If I had to run stairs for 8 straight hours a day, I feel like I'd be huffing too.
I think I would like stand at the top of the stairs, scream at my mom, and then slam my door over and over again until it made the loudest noise.
Interestingly enough, her coach is also like, I think because she has such a disciplined, strict home life, she kind of took her typical rebellious teen years out in the gym.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an interesting perspective to think that like, if the worst thing she did was huff at her gymnastics coach after being demanded to like do a beam performance 32 times in a row because that was like her biggest backlash. That's kind of crazy.
So now she's at nationals again. She has her head in the damn game. She says that the first time she was there, she was also scared to do too good because she wanted to make friends. And now she's like, oh no, I forgot that we're all training for this so hard. You're not supposed to hold back because of friendship.
Yeah, that's so interesting. She's like, I didn't want to beat anybody. I didn't want them to not like me.
Being the best Simone I could be ended up with me taking first place all around at the U.S. Secret Classic in Chicago and third all around at the Visa National Championships in St. Louis in June. At nationals, I was also vault champion after once again performing a strong Memoir. It's so funny to be like, finally, I decided to just be the best Simone I could be, which also was the best out of anybody. And then she is officially named to the nationals team and she's up on the podium. I could hardly believe my dream was coming true.
So this is 2012 and she's on the women's junior national team. And there's only 6 that year.
So then they're watching the 2012 Olympics and someone is like, that could be you someday. And she's like, oh my God, do you really think?
I'm like, yeah, I do think.
And I would have said that even if I didn't already know what happened.
I mean, the minute I heard about her as a little girl, I said, you're special.
Yeah.
So she ends up competing at the American Cup. This begins just her crushing it.
She gets her first assignment as a junior USAG gymnast. And she's like freaking out before her first competition. She feels so sick. And then they're like, are you anxious? And she goes, oh my God, yeah, it is just nerves. And Martha realizes like she is great. She just gets in her head so bad. And so even though she fucks up at her first official competition as a member of the USAG junior team.
She comes in second and her teammate comes in first. So it's like not a big deal.
Yeah. And she's like, Martha's going to freak out. And Martha was like, no, that was your first try. You did a really good job.
It's so funny. So she's like, in addition to gymnastics, big things were happening at home. I turned 16, so I got a car. And you're just like, yeah, I guess that's also a big deal. But her parents immediately go, well, since you have this car, you have to drive your sister to school every day. Her sister starts school at 6:15 a.m. Why?
I don't know.
Why on earth would you need to be at school at 6:15? Anyway, Simone needs to be at the gym at 9. So she has to wake up at like 5 a.m., even though she doesn't really have to be awake until 8, just to drop her sister off every day. And I'm just like, damn, this is why you turned out so well-rounded. Because a lot of parents would be like, oh, you're our cash cow. You're our star. Think about what Gracie Gold's mom was like dragging that twin sister. Gracie Gold had a twin sister who like did not get attention for 15 straight years.
Yeah, I do feel like for the parents to be like, okay, we actually don't care that you're an elite athlete. You have to do carpool.
Meanwhile, she starts going to like international competitions and winning. She goes to Italy. The women won gold and I won the all-around title as well as taking first place in vault, beam, and floor. A couple of weeks later, we're in Germany.
That's her caveat. She goes, whenever I wasn't traveling internationally for competitions, I had to do carpool.
I placed first in vault, beam, and floor and took silver in the all-around. So she is just like crushing it internationally.
She ends up kind of getting in her head again and slacking off a little bit in practices. Instead of that whole experience pushing me to train even harder, I began slacking off. Maybe I was afraid of making an all-out effort and then failing. Worse, what if I kept winning? That was a lot to live up to. Could I really meet such high expectations from everyone? Was I really good enough? This really paints what happened in 2020.
Yeah. Chicago, July 27th, 2013. By the time I get to the floor exercise, I was so tired, I could barely feel my legs. I know what Amy was going to say, that I hadn't trained seriously enough. So she is obviously so naturally talented. And of course, when she says she's slacking off, she's still working incredibly hard, just not 100% of what she's capable of. So she had kept pulling out a lot of golds at all these international competitions, but she hits a wall where her body's just exhausted.
She's wobbling on the beam. She's falling off the bars.
And eventually she gets pulled from a meet.
She hurts her ankle on the vault and her coach is just stop now. You're going to hurt yourself worse. We're not doing this. Your head's not in it.
And Martha says, the problem is how you prepared, or rather how you didn't prepare. We'll talk about it later.
And then someone else's coach makes a comment about her weight.
And she's like, that can't be true because I weighed this much when I was winning. Also, obviously it's not true. Look at her. She's fucking muscle.
Of course it's not true. But I do think that in a sport where your body is so important, the fact that her coach, the coach's coach, everyone else was stop it. She makes a couple comments in this book about how Amy was never on her about her eating, never talked about her body like that. And I also think that's so crucial because again, what happened to Gracie Gold.
And what's interesting is the person who made that comment about Simone's weight was a man. And of course, all of Gracie Gold's coaches were men. And I think it's really important to have a female coach who understands how could they not be properly feeding their bodies when they're working out 8 hours a day?
Exactly.
I mean, even if you're not working out 8 hours a day and you're 16 years old, it tends to come in and come out.
I mean, every single piece of research is when you are obsessing over thinness instead of strength, you get osteoporosis and fall apart.
In the end, 2 really good things came out of my terrible performance at the 2013 Secret Classic. I had a one-on-one coaching session with Martha at the ranch, and my parents arranged for me to meet regularly with a sports psychologist. And it's so interesting because she really is just such a head case that just meeting with the psychologist a couple of times completely clarifies things for her. And Martha straight up says listen, you have to do it for you. You have the power. You need the discipline. You need to just get out there and get your head under control and work.
Yeah. And then she talks about how close the USA team is. Some people have said that the enduring relationships that have grown out of these shared experiences are part of the secret of Team USA's success. We're all bonded as a group so that in competition, we root for one another. We have each other's back. Ugh, you could be the strongest athlete in the world. And if it's not friendship, it's nothing.
The other thing the sports psychologist says is why do you do it? And she's like, because it's fun. And he goes, yeah. When you're losing, it's because you're not having fun. You're thinking about the expectations. The most important thing for you to do is go out there and remember that you do this because it's fun.
Yeah, and you can't control other people's thoughts and feelings. So if you are only focused on other people's expectations, that's just not even something you have control over.
She also has a cute story about this girl, Maggie Nichols, who shows up to the ranch. And I'm sure in gymnastics to show up to the ranch the first time and be with all these girls that you've idolized and you're so young and you're so nervous. And it's basically high school, but for extreme athletes. A lot of the girls go in and are so shy. And Simone says she really went out of her way to make sure this girl, Maggie, felt included and made sure to drag her out of her cabin and come hang out with everybody. And she says it was the first time she felt an important part of the team because she's I went from being that shy girl who needed to be brought into the fold to the girl who's bringing new people into the fold. And that's when I really was oh, I belong here.
It's really sweet.
So sweet.
A couple chapters ago, we skipped it. She got a dog and the dog was a prize for winning a competition. She wanted a dog and her parents didn't think that she would place first all around at this big competition. So they were okay, yeah, if you can nail that, then you can have a dog. She gets a dog. Now it's her first year still on the junior USAG team, I think. And she wants to get her belly button pierced so bad. She's 16 years old. Her mom says if you win worlds, you can get your belly button pierced.
I think this is her first senior competition.
Oh, yeah, because otherwise she wouldn't be at Worlds. So she's going to Worlds for the first time. It's her first year as a senior.
And she hasn't even gotten on the team. So basically that whole senior thing is once you're one of those elite 15 that's on the senior team, then Martha Crowley picks who gets dispatched basically to each different competition. And Worlds is it's being first string basically. Nobody knows who's going to be the starter. And sure enough, she gets selected to be a starter. And then she shows up at Worlds and then she fucking wins gold all around.
I felt such pride and happiness every time one of my teammates saluted the judges and the audience cheered. To know that I was a part of that was incredible.
Martha had told me when she chose me for the team, Simone, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain at this Worlds. Just take it day by day and set a name for yourself. And boy, did she. It's also where she invented the original Biles. I looked it up. I think she now has 6 different moves called the Bileses.
Yeah, they should just call them something else.
They should let her just name it whatever she wants to name it.
Yeah.
This is so funny. In the end, I won 4 medals at Worlds, 2 gold for all around and floor, silver for vault, and bronze for balance beam. Team USA's men and women won 12 medals overall, making 2013 a very good year for our country. So men and women together won 12 medals. Simone won 4 of them.
That's so many. So then someone on the Italian team makes a comment about Simone's race and it blows up on the internet. And Simone is like, I don't know, that was just obviously such a stupid thing to say.
Yeah, Simone's like, I don't want to be dragged into this. And her mom are like, you know what? This isn't our battle. Like, I'm not going to get dragged into somebody else's racism. But they had already gotten her dad on the phone. So like now they have a response. And because of that, it just keeps getting dragged out.
And then the official Italian Federation says something
like genuinely so racist, basically being like, well, Black athletes have an advantage because everything is like being reorganized to favor them.
Yeah.
Which is just fucking preposterous.
It's preposterous. And it gets to the conversation about like style of gymnastics. And she's like, it's just insane to say that like jumping really powerfully isn't graceful. It's so
and also
graceful.
That like grace and power is determined by race.
And that they're opposites.
Yeah, she's like, what that girl said is ridiculous. But like when the Italian Federation came out and it was like straight up awfully racist, she's like, now I was pissed.
Yeah. It's just so sad, especially like it's her first Worlds. She won it all. And she's like, what, 17?
So she goes home and her brother's like, well, how does it feel? And she goes, I don't know. I still hadn't taken it in. I want to go to the Olympics. That's my new goal. He laughed and threw his head back. That's right, Simone, he said. You keep dreaming, girl. So then her parents throw her this huge Worlds party. And I think it's like the first time she feels the impact of like her life. Because right now it's just one of those things. I mean, she's so young. And it's kind of all she's known. She just keeps putting one foot in front of the other. And all of a sudden she's like,
there's like a 400-person catered event for her and her success. And she like goes to her room. She's like, this is actually a lot. And she's just unpacking her bags while there's a massive party happening downstairs. In that moment, the full force of what I'd done finally hit me. I had competed at Worlds and won. I really just did that. As cheerful voices and bursts of laughter from my Worlds party floated through my window, mixing with the rhythm of Burn. She's listening to Burn by, Ellie Goulding?
Yeah, she's like, randomly it was on a lot at Worlds and now it was randomly on the radio again. I was like, yeah, it was probably the song of the summer. I don't know if it was random or like a pretty concerted attack by her recording label.
I collapsed onto my bedroom floor and started bawling. I was just so proud of myself. And somewhere in there, I had this thought, I'm getting a belly ring.
So now things start to get weird. She goes into Bannon's one day and Amy's just like, I don't know, do whatever you want. There's no workout. And all the other kids are like, oh my God, free day, incredible. But of course, Simone is a soon-to-be Olympian. She's not like, this is good, this is weird. So everyone's like, well, okay. And they're hanging out. And then all of a sudden they hear Coach Amy screaming at Coach Thomas and then packing all her stuff and leaving. So Simone calls her mom and her mom's like, okay, don't tell anyone else. Amy just left. We're not making any sudden moves. Go to church. Her and her sister go to church, and at church they're hysterically crying because they're like, what's going to happen to our whole lives? And even the priest is like, okay, go to your car. So they're just sitting now in the car being like, we don't know what to do.
I guess I will say when I was reading this, I was like, you're fine. But now that I think about it, if they're going to either get new coaches or follow Amy, that could have meant such a change. Like, what if she had ended up at a gym in Arizona?
I mean, what if she had ended up with just a bad coach that didn't work with her and she's like 1 year out from the fucking Olympics?
Yeah.
In her mind, she gets one shot at the Olympics. These are pretty crucial times. And the person that she has given up everything to work with, given up high school, given up other opportunities. I mean, she has like bet it all on this woman who had no previous experience.
She like uprooted everything to work at a startup. And now that startup just like randomly doesn't have funding.
I mean, truly. And think about it. Like, she has picked her specifically because of the way they work with each other. What if she goes to someone who doesn't get Simone at all, pushes her to the point of breaking? I don't think Simone is somebody who couldn't be broken.
Yeah.
I think with the wrong coaching, she could have been a basket case.
So the mom and Amy, meanwhile, while Simone and Adria are at church, are having a conversation where in that moment, they decide to completely from scratch, from a plot of land, build their own elite gym. I feel like there's one sentence in this entire book about how difficult it was to be in random rented spaces leading up to the 2016 Olympics. Because this gym didn't open until Simone was, I think, at the Olympics. Can I say? Really good timing for press.
Yeah. Especially because they named it the World's Champion Center or something.
Yeah.
So how helpful to have like a recently Olympic champion. My dad had traveled to see a football game in Detroit that week. So my mom called him on Saturday and told him about her crazy plan. Ron, we're building a gym. On Monday, when dad returned, mom showed him the 4-acre plot of land. 2 days after that, they actually signed a contract to purchase it. So they sold their 14 nursing homes and put all the money, and it was like huge. Where's the description? A 52,000 square foot climate controlled gym with 40-foot high ceilings. There would be a giant foam pit, huge helicopter fans, a fitness center for parents, an upstairs viewing area with comfy armchairs, Wi-Fi everywhere, an apparel and accessories store, a cafe with healthy snacks, physical therapy, and rehab rooms, and even a dedicated homeschool classroom with a teacher permanently on staff.
Holy shit.
Can I say, now that I'm reading this, I'm like, oh, of course, this is also an advertisement for that. I'm like, they made it sound crazy, but I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Like, they need to still fund it.
Yeah.
So at this point, they must know that like Simone is the greatest advertisement you could have.
Yeah. I think at this point, I think they can be pretty confident that they could have the kind of gym people would move to attend if they want an elite gymnast. And Amy goes on to coach an Olympic team. Like, she went from having never coached an elite athlete to coaching an Olympic team.
It's crazy what like one great kid can do for you. I got it more from the Gracie Gold story than this, because this is obviously like a happy story, whereas the Gracie one's kind of fucked up. But that kind of relationship where like an adult professionally needs a child to be able to like do truly once a generation type shit.
Yeah.
Is a bit perverse.
Yeah.
It gets sticky. So then she talks about what it was like, because of course that gym didn't get built overnight. It got built over the course of 2 years. So first they rent out space in somebody else's gym, but she's like, that got kind of tricky after 6 months, because like we're two competing teams in the same space and it's their space first and foremost. So then her mom gets a 1-year lease at a warehouse.
And they just build a gym in that warehouse. Like, this was such an expensive endeavor.
Yeah. And then she's like, because it was so hot and they were worried that we'd get sweaty and then trip on the sweat, they ended up having to like build commercial HVAC into the warehouse, even though we were only there for a year because we had to keep it safe. And she's like, we started with 8 girls and 2 coaches. By the time we left a year later, when the real gym was ready, we had over 300 girls training there.
Holy shit.
Everyone from children to full-on elite gymnasts.
And then the next hiccup is that because now Amy is the head coach at this like kind of evolving WCC gym, she is now so busy and she doesn't have as much time to work one-on-one with Simone. And Simone kind of has a meltdown where she's like, I'm trying to get ready for the Olympics and I don't feel like you're here.
And so she goes to the World Championships that year and she's very nervous because, of course, the way it always is, you could be an Olympian or you could be a 4-year-old. Well, not a 4-year-old, but I feel like everybody's like, I won, but it was a fluke.
Yeah.
Imposter syndrome gets us all. She's like, yeah, I won worlds last year and also vault and also beam. But it was a fluke because the year after the Olympics, a lot of people retire. So it's like not as hard of a deck and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she goes back. She wins again.
Yeah, it turns out she's like so good at gymnastics.
And she even like stumbled on something and she ends up being so proud of herself. She's like, I don't know. It's one thing to win beam with a perfect routine, but the fact that I still won beam and fell, that's pretty impressive.
At one point, she's like, yeah, at Worlds, I was actually in gold by 4 whole points. This is also when she has that funny moment where on the podium, there's a bee in her flowers. And so she's hopping around and looking goofy.
And she also starts to like get Martha and understand her style, which is that Martha thought because she was so sweet and hugging everybody and chatting with everyone and bubbly that she wasn't head in the game. But now Martha realizes that like if she just sits and thinks about her routine, she's going to psych herself out and freak out. It's better for her to be distracted and treat it like a practice so that she can go out there and do what she does every day in practice. And she said it actually helped the whole team because now the whole team has a little bit of like a looser, chiller, more social environment, which is good for everybody's mindset. It's not good to go and like freak yourself out and be like super intense. And Martha realizes they only perform better. So like it's been good for the whole team to see that you don't have to be that stern all the time. But that doesn't mean Martha went any easier on us than training, not one bit. So then she goes to Scotland. It's at Glasgow. And she is fucking stressed because everyone's screaming three-peat, three-peat.
This is her 3rd year at Worlds now.
Nobody in America has ever won 3 in a row. She would be the most decorated American of all time, blah, 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 blah. She freaks out. She doesn't know what to do. She wins. It's like not a problem.
Yeah, everyone is like more tired than usual, but then she still wins anyway.
I had a couple of wobbly moments, but in the end, I'd lived up to WCC's name. I think that's when it opened.
Yeah.
When she's in Scotland, three-peating.
When she's winning her 3rd consecutive world champion gold medal.
And that's the first time she's at the mall. And she's like, do you feel like everyone's looking at me? And her sister's like, oh yeah, you're like the most decorated American gymnast of all time. That's kind of a big deal. People know you. And she's like, why?
She has mostly been kind of putting one foot in front of the other. And then I think after that first Worlds party, she was like, okay, within gymnastics, I'm a big deal. And then I think now winning 3 consecutive world championships, she's like, wait, Do other people know about gymnastics?
So now she's 17 years old. She's a senior in high school. The next question is, where will she go to college? And much like her high school life, her number one dream has always been to play with a team. She loves the camaraderie. She loves the friendship. She goes and spends the night at UCLA and they go to a basketball game. And she's like, this is all I've ever wanted, to dress up in outfits and have like pep rallies. And she like calls up the coach of UCLA and says, I'm going to go here.
Yeah, it's pretty heavily between Alabama and UCLA. She's been being recruited since she was 13 years old, but her parents want her to go to Alabama because it's closer. But UCLA is just like where her heart is. And so she says yes. And then she says, I'm going to probably need to defer for a year because if I make the Olympics, like can you imagine? And I'm not saying that as someone who knows she won the Olympics, but she just won 3 world championships in a row.
Yeah, it seems like maybe at the very least she's the best in the US.
Yeah. And also the world 3 years in a row.
But I'm just saying, like, worst case scenario, she's the best the US has to offer.
Then it turns out, I always thought the Olympics, when did the Olympics stop being amateur? I guess a while ago, because professional basketball players have been going to the Olympics since like the 80s.
Yeah.
Whatever. So in order to be an NCAA eligible athlete, you cannot have ever made money from a sport, which is something that's been quite contentious.
And it's also so fucked up because at all of these little meets, she's winning money and she can't ever cash any of the checks. And I get that, I guess at her level, somebody else is paying for it. I guess like the second she became on the junior team, everything's been paid for by the US government, maybe? Like the Olympic development deals? I don't know. I don't know how the money works. Like she is so obviously fortunate that she has this family system where she is eating. But when you hear these stories about kids who are like struggling and come from backgrounds that are like less fortunate, and the idea that they are like giving it their all and cannot just fucking make money, it is so fucked.
Yeah.
And because so many other people profit off of them. Like every time you air sports on TV, somebody's making money. Why shouldn't it be the athletes?
Yeah, especially at this level. It's so insane. So she has been unable to make money from gymnastics this entire time.
And I don't even think she's noticed because I guess what 17-year-old has money?
Yeah.
And what would she even be doing? She's not even allowed to like fucking go to a party. How much money do you need to hang out with your sister in the cul-de-sac?
Yeah. It turns out not that much. Like she got a car when she needed a car. That's kind of it. That's kind of all she's ever wanted. And so then she starts getting this outreach for all of these endorsement deals because now she is a famous gymnast who is about to go to the Olympics. And she's stuck in this place where if she takes anything, she can't go to UCLA after the Olympics.
And in her mind and her family's mind, this is her one and only Olympics. Again, Ali Reisman did too, but that was like such a crazy that she did that.
Yeah. She thought she would go to the Olympics and then be a college athlete and then retire. That's kind of like the trajectory. And so she had no idea. And she's really torn, it seems, when everyone in her family is like, I don't know, you are an extremely elite gymnast. You can always go to college someday.
But she's like, but I want to be on the team. And I think they're like, okay, well, the USA team is also a team.
Yeah.
You could just be on the USA national team and then like go to Calc 4 later.
Yeah, there was no way to know if I would still be at the top of my game. Gymnastics wasn't like soccer or swimming or track and field where athletes could qualify multiple times. Most female athletes only go to the Olympics once, and sponsors wanted her now. She was like, okay, if I'm ever going to make good money, it's only going to be this year.
So she keeps asking everybody, what do you think? And her parents won't tell her what to do. But finally, her brother goes, if you have the talent to go pro and don't do it, that would be pretty stupid. You might always regret it. And everyone's like, listen, you could get paid to do the thing you love most. Like, when else is this going to be an opportunity? You can always go to college. I mean, everybody's kind of like, come on, Simone. You're best in the fucking world. You're not going to go to the Olympics and like be on a Wheaties box. And so finally she's like, all right, I'm in. Okay, Simone, you've given up one of your dreams for an even bigger dream that you're chasing. Olympic success and everything that comes with it, including your face on a cereal box and maybe even your own line of Leos. You're giving up a smaller dream for a bigger one that you actually have a chance of achieving. You can still go to college afterwards.
So then she gets a money manager and an agent to help her with this whole going pro situation. And the money manager is like, okay, let's set like a little financial goal treat for yourself, like a big thing you can buy yourself. And she can't think of anything she even wants. And finally, she's like, I think I want to take my friends on a vacation to Bora Bora. Do you think I can afford it? And her brother starts crying. He's like, yeah, you can go to Bora Bora. You have money for vacation. You could probably buy a few properties too.
So they start prepping. They go to the Nationals in 2016. She does great there too. Though some reporters had referred to me as the robot because of my consistency in competition, I was as human as the next girl. Let me tell you, I have as many bad practices and hard days as every other person on the team. The bottom line, there's no such thing as perfection in gymnastics. You do your best, but anything can happen, which is why you have to learn to forgive yourself and quickly move on.
So she's competing a lot less because they're leading up to the Olympics, and Martha wants to make sure the entire team is as healthy as humanly possible. And then she qualifies. She's so excited. She says her dream for the Olympics was not even about winning. It was just about going. And now she's going and she can't believe it. They do this intensive training camp leading up to the Olympics. So for 10 days prior to going to Brazil, they're at the ranch, like the training ranch. And then they go straight to Brazil from the ranch. And there they're training intensely. It's a lot of training.
But right before she gets to the ranch, she's like hysterically crying at her house and her parents don't know what to do. So they call her sports psychologist and he goes, go ahead and cry. You probably need a good cry right now. And then a little while later, when I finally cried myself out, he said, so what's worrying you? I don't think I'm going to be ready. Everybody has these huge expectations of me and I'm afraid I won't be able to meet them. Well, you can't really worry about other people's expectations. You don't usually do that, so don't start worrying now. All you can truly control is committing yourself to practices and doing your best out there. And she's like, okay, I feel better.
And she talks to Allie Reisman, and Allie is like, this is just Worlds again. It's the same thing as Worlds. Just don't look at the rings.
Yeah. So then they have to come up with a team name. It's Gabby Douglas, Lori Hernandez, Allie Reisman, Maddie Koshin, and Simone Biles. And they're like, what should we name ourselves? It's so important. And they end on the final 5 because it's the last time 5 people will go to the Olympics. Like now the teams are only 4. Then also it's because it's Martha's last season. After this year, she's retiring. But they're not going to tell her until they're there.
So she's training and she's freaking out because she has to train on a different brand of bars, and bars have always been her hardest thing. The Gym Nova bars were springier and swung faster than the bar setup I'd trained on for most of my life, and I just couldn't get the hang of them. Okay, I had this with stripper poles too. I didn't know the bars themselves rotated. I always thought people were
ripping their hands apart.
Yeah, who knew? I guess everybody.
No, I didn't know.
It makes way more sense this way.
Yeah. So her mom comes out to the ranch and is like, what are your goals? She's like, I don't have time for goals, Mom. I'm going to the Olympics. And her mom's like, that's exactly why you must sit down and make time to write your goals. So she writes her mom a little note. She sends, this is so funny. They're such high school girls. They're going to Brazil straight from the ranch. And so they have all new US Olympic status Leos and everything. And so they're sending all of their parents back home with their old dirty camp laundry. And in her laundry, she writes her parents this note. Hi, Mom and Dad. I love you all. I'll see you soon in Rio. I will make you proud. Love, Simone. Kisses. Mom told me later when she read the words, I will make you proud, scrawled in my big round handwriting in the notebook tucked between my sweaty Leos. She put her hand over her mouth and wept. That made me cry. Really I was like, oh my God, I'll never be as proud as my kids as I would have been if that was my daughter. They'll never make me feel that way.
I can't wait to talk to your children someday. And if they're ever worried about making you proud, I'll say,
can't.
You're not Simone Biles. So maybe just do whatever you can do and know it'll never be the best.
Let the burden be off your shoulders that you failed. The minute you were born, you failed. So find freedom in that. So they go down.
They get to Brazil. It's an adult athlete fantasy land.
She's so excited. They're trying to take photos with everybody. She says that everyone knows who they are because obviously.
Because they're so little.
The gymnasts are so teeny tiny. And she's like, we laughed, we Snapchatted, we watched Modern Family. I'm like, you guys are so regular.
From the balcony, we could watch all the athletes from all over the world coming and going, jogging on footpaths, doing laps in the pool.
They're having so much fun. They're doing their Olympics. The all-around competition hits. Guess what? She wins.
They do a really good job at all-around.
Oh, first they win team gold, which is huge. And then she wins all-around gold.
And then I think she wins gold at more than one individual event and then bronze on the vault.
Yeah, I think she won
a lot of medals.
She kind of crushes it.
She's everything was just working. Every skill flowed into the next one. Everything just worked.
But what mattered the most was that she gets to meet Zac Efron, and she almost spends more time talking about Zac Efron. She's like, can you believe he's a fan of me? And I'm like, yes, Simone.
You're actually
everyone
really
but your
good.
Husband is your biggest fan.
Everybody can be an actor. Not everyone can be an Olympic gymnast.
And she's like, Mrs. Obama tweeted at me. She gets to carry the flagpole on the closing ceremony. She's like, I didn't even know I was in the running. I can't believe they voted for me.
And she's like, how could I carry the flag? It's so big. Michael Phelps carried it on the way in, but I'm much smaller.
I could hardly wait to see where my life would take me next, what new goals I would set for myself, what dreams I would hold on to. But all of that was still to come. As incredible as my Olympic journey has been, my greatest gift has been the chance to bring joy to those who love me most, my family. More than all the gold medals in the world, I'd want to make them proud. After all, it was Mom and Dad who'd first given me the courage to dream such a big dream and to soar higher than I ever imagined I could. They'd known all along that I had wings. They'd just been waiting for me to spread them. You don't even know what's coming, Simone. I am so excited for you. I love you so much.
I can't believe she thought this was like the cap on her career.
You were just like an inspiration. I mean, honestly, you're not an inspiration because like I feel like what you do in your life has literally nothing to do with my life. I'm like nothing you do has anything to like. What am I going to look at you and be like, maybe me, not me,
Not me.
But I'm happy to know someone's out there doing it.
And also, it's so crazy that she's won, I think, like 6 world's titles since.
Yeah,
and gone to the Olympics, but then backed out of the Olympics.
which I thought was brave.
Me too. I love that about her. And now she's back in another Olympics. I can't wait to watch. But also, just do your best. Don't think about me watching.
Oh, are you talking about Simone? I thought you meant like listeners should just do their. I'm like, no offense, but nobody listening, none of our best has anything to do with her best.
No, I'm saying that if at this Olympics she decides to not do it again.
Can you imagine if Simone Biles was prepping for the Olympics right now with our episode about her book? Simone, we love you.
I love you.
Also, we will be watching Stick It for the Patreon this week.
I can't wait.
In addition to doing coverage of the Olympics.
I can't wait to cover the Olymps. I'll see you next time. And thank you to the gold medalists of my heart, our 5-star reviewers.